The Euphrates River is not only rising fast, but it has unleashed something absolutely terrifying. In this video, we'll explore the untold secrets of the Euphrates and unveil the existence of a mystical creature living within its depths. But that's not all. We'll also delve into the future of the Euphrates River in Syria and other regions. Get ready for this epic journey filled with mystery, wonder, and the alarming truth about one of the world's most iconic rivers. The sun has started to set, illuminating the ancient waters of the Euphrates River with a golden hue. People who lived along the riverbanks were unnerved by the eerie stillness that descended upon the environment as the sun began to set over the landscape. They had no idea that a menacing presence was hiding beneath the placid surface, all the while watching them. It was said that strange things were happening in the area, such as missing livestock, fishermen who never came back, and eerie sounds coming from the depths of the river. These rumors spread through the nearby villages. Fear and curiosity were intertwined, which fueled a desire to get to the bottom of the matter. It was said that a terrifying creature, one that was born from people's worst nightmares, had taken refuge within the dark abyss of the river. A courageous young fisherman by the name of Malik made the decision one moonlit evening to confront the mystery that plagued their lives. At the time, the village was shrouded in a shroud of mystery, and the evening was lit only by the light of the moon. He gathered his fishing equipment with a mixture of fear and determination, and then he set out onto the water to begin his fishing adventure. As he continued to row deeper into the river's core, he could feel his heart pounding in his chest. The only sound he could hear was the sound of the water gently lapping against the sides of the small boat he was in. Silence engulfed him. The once familiar surroundings morphed into a shadowy labyrinth, where every ripple and movement appeared to be magnified to an extreme degree. It was as if the river's very essence were aware of the presence that lay dormant within it, and it held its breath as a result. Malik was startled when he heard a low growl that suddenly reverberated through the air and sent shivers down his spine. He froze, his eyes searching the murky depths for any indication of movement despite his state of suspension. He was overcome with a foreboding sense of danger, but he continued on regardless, refusing to give in to the paralyzing grip that fear had on him. While he was lowering the net into the depths, a brisk wind swept through the boat and put out the light he had been using. The night fell, bringing with it an overpowering sense of foreboding along with it. Malik's heart was pounding as he fumbled around for a match. He needed a glimmer of light to break through the darkness as quickly as possible. After the lantern was relit, his pupils drew back in shock as they took in the scene that awaited him. A pair of glowing eyes with a malicious expression glared back from the edge of the water as the monstrous creature's form became gradually more apparent. A repulsive creature emerged from the depths, its scaled body glistening in the dim light cast by the moon. This beast was much larger than any known species. Malik's veins were filled with fear, but his survival instinct kicked in at the crucial moment. He grabbed his rowing oar and swung it with all his might, making contact with the animal's nose in the process. The beast roared in rage and began violently flailing its limbs in the water. As the creature fought back, the boat began to rock dangerously, and it looked like it might capsize. Malik threw his net at the creature's gaping maw in an effort to get away from it as quickly as possible. The monstrosity was rendered temporarily immobile as a result of the net becoming entangled around its teeth as it closed. Malik saw his chance and began paddling furiously, propelling his boat away from the creature's grasp as quickly as he could. As a result of the commotion, the villagers were alerted, and they watched in awe and terror as Malik returned, his boat battered and his face etched with both victory and fear. The story of his experience spread like wildfire, and those who heard it began to believe there was a monster hiding somewhere in the Euphrates River. This belief took root in their hearts and minds. Since that day forward, there has been a sense of deference and vigilance around the river. Fishermen and travelers alike approached its waters with a mixture of reverence and wariness. They never forgot the night when Malik stared into the eyes of a creature that should only exist in nightmares when they approached its waters. As a result, the mystery surrounding the Euphrates River has persisted, serving as a constant reminder that this world contains spheres within which darkness and the unknown reside, patiently awaiting those who are courageous enough to face them. The story of Malik's encounter with the monstrous creature quickly spread through the land, capturing the attention and the imagination of a great number of people. However, while some were merely intrigued, there were others who became consumed by a perilous curiosity, and they were drawn to the Euphrates River like moths to a flame. The tale of the creature's existence enticed a group of daring explorers, and they embarked on a perilous journey in order to see the mystery for themselves. They were eager to capture evidence of the creature's existence, so they ventured into the darkness that covered the river, armed with cameras, recording equipment, and a naive sense of invincibility. Their journey led them deep into the heart of the waterway, and as they progressed, they experienced a mixture of excitement and fear. They were navigating their way through the winding channels when they became aware of an unseen presence, watching their every move. It was as if the river itself had become sentient and hostile toward them. At long last, the results of their labor became apparent. They became aware of the creature's presence when there was an abrupt disturbance in the water. They desperately tried to capture on film the evasive being by pointing their cameras in the direction of the river while their hands were shaking. They were overcome with terror as a deafening roar reverberated through the air and caused their hearts to quiver. They caught a glimpse of the colossal form of the creature rising from the depths as it glowed with an evil intent in its eyes as the dim light revealed it to them. The terrifying image sent tremors through their veins, but it was too late to turn back now. The beast lunged forward, and with unearthly speed, its jaws snapped shut, preventing any further movement. As the explorers fought for their lives and scrambled to get away from the clutches of the ravenous beast, chaos broke out in the area. Screams of desperation reverberated throughout the night, interspersed with the sounds of bones cracking and flesh being torn apart. The Euphrates River eventually resumed its seemingly placid state when dawn finally broke, but the individuals who had the audacity to confront the beast were forced to pay a price that was both physically and emotionally devastating. The bodies of the unfortunate explorers washed up on the shore, each one of their lifeless forms bearing the unmistakable signs of a harrowing struggle before their untimely deaths. The communities that lived along the river grieved the loss of their lost souls, their hearts heavy with the weight of their sorrow and their remorse. They were aware of the dangerous allure of the creature that was hiding beneath the surface, a force that demanded reverence and respect from those who encountered it. Since that day forward, the stories and warnings that have been passed down about the Euphrates River have taken on a more serious tone. The natives warned one another by recounting the calamities that befell those who had the audacity to challenge the river's mysterious watcher. The entire region was overtaken by a palpable feeling of dread, which discouraged anyone other than the most foolhardy from approaching the water's edge. As a result, the river Euphrates kept its mysteries to itself, and the beast that was said to lurk within it became an everlasting reminder of the dangers that can be found in the realm of the unknown. It stood as a chilling testament to the consequences that awaited those who sought to unravel its mysteries, and it served as a stark reminder that some secrets are better left undisturbed, hidden within the depths of the ancient river for all of eternity. As more time passed, a strange transformation started to spread across the Euphrates River, which ultimately resulted in a shift in the way its existence worked. The water level, which had previously been predictable and constant, started to gradually rise, which altered the landscape that had remained the same for generations without change. It seemed as though the very nature of the river was changing, and along with it came a change in the regularity of the eerie occurrences that had been plaguing its shores. It's a mystery why there have been fewer reports of sightings of the mysterious creature and other unexplained occurrences, but this is the case. The towns that were scattered along the riverbanks spread the word about the unexplainable calm that had descended upon the waters, which had previously been raging. Some people started to hypothesize that the rise in water level had destroyed the creature's habitat or forced it to move to a new dimension that they were not familiar with. Now let's move to Syria and understand the future of Euphrates according to reports. When compared to 100 years ago, temperatures in northern Syria's northeast have increased by 1 degree Celsius, while the region's average rainfall has decreased by 18 millimeters per month over the same time period. The Ministry of Water Resources in Iraq has issued a warning that the river may run dry by the year 2040. It is possible that the actions of humans have contributed to the destruction of the Euphrates River, which is considered to be the cradle of civilization. As a result, people may be forced to abandon a location that they have called home for thousands of years. The Euphrates River is the largest and one of the oldest rivers in Western Asia. It is also one of the longest rivers in Western Asia. The Euphrates River is an important source of fresh water for Syria. On the other hand, climate change is leaving its mark on the Euphrates and has made the fragile situation and the tensions in the Syrian civil war even worse. Because of the drought, rainfall in the river basin has significantly decreased, which has resulted in water levels in the Euphrates River falling to levels that are historically low. As a result, local populations are at risk of disease and may be forced to relocate. Is it possible to turn this situation around? Throughout the course of history, the Euphrates has been responsible for satisfying 85% of Syria's agricultural demand for water. People draw drinking water from the river as well as cultivate agricultural land and raise livestock along its banks. The strong connection that exists between the Syrian people and the river is helped to be made manifest by the performance of religious rites and the imbuing of the waterway with spiritual characteristics. Now, low water levels have combined with poor water quality to generate multiple crises, including famine and an outbreak of cholera that has been ongoing since September 2022. These crises have been caused by a combination of factors, including poor water quality and low water levels. The effects of climate change. During dry years, the flow of water in the Euphrates and Tigris river systems has dropped to almost half of what it used to be on average each year. This decline occurred over the course of the past few decades. At this time, the water level in the Euphrates is at one of the lowest points that has ever been recorded in its entire history. Together, these two factors, a decrease in the amount of water that is available and an increase in the human population, have contributed to an increased degree of water insecurity in countries further downstream, such as Syria. The droughts in Syria have had the greatest impact on the country's farmers and herders, putting them in a vulnerable position and putting many of the country's rural populations at risk of being displaced. Since the beginning of the conflict in 2011, the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations reports that Syria's wheat harvest has decreased by 75%. Now, after more than a decade of conflict caused by the Syrian civil war, many farmers are struggling to adapt to new realities caused by the changing climate, while also dealing with harsh economic and security conditions. The people who will be most negatively impacted by these shifts are those who rely heavily on the Euphrates for their survival. Particularly, water issues are having an effect on the agricultural sector in Syria. Farmers in northeastern Syria are losing their crops as a result of contaminated water and a lack of irrigation because of these water issues. According to Catherine Bliss, who is the Director of Immunizations and Health Systems Resilience at the Global Health Policy Center at CSIS, one of the challenges that we've seen with respect to recurrent drought is that people are finding it necessary to either go further to find their water or to seek water from sources that have turned out to be contaminated. WASH stands for Water Access, Sanitation, and Hygiene. Cholera is an infectious disease. The combined effects of war, climate change, economic decline, interruptions in electricity supply, and a fuel supply crisis have all had a negative impact on WASH systems. After more than a decade of civil war, Syria's supply of drinkable water has dropped by 40%, and the country's essential water infrastructure has suffered severe damage. There are many areas of the country where the water that comes from the Euphrates cannot be purified, and there is no way for it to be distributed. According to the United Nations Children's Fund, up to 47% of the population is relying on alternatives to piped water that are frequently unsafe. The low water levels and stagnation in the Euphrates River are a cause for concern for public health in the primary sense that they encourage the growth of microorganisms and have the potential to cause an outbreak of disease. After 15 cases that were confirmed in a laboratory and 1 fatality, the Syrian Ministry of Health announced on September 10, 2022, that the Aleppo governorate was experiencing an outbreak of cholera. This highly contagious disease first appeared in Syria because of the country's limited access to clean water, and it has since rapidly spread throughout the northeastern part of the country. Syrians are dying from cholera, an ancient disease that can be cured despite the fact that cholera is uncommon in developed countries and can be effectively treated with hydration. This is because Syrians lack access to clean water, their health infrastructure is lacking, and global vaccine supplies are running low. The Syrian healthcare system is in disrepair, and many of the country's hospitals are either overburdened or lack the necessary medications and equipment. Using water itself as a weapon. The minimum and average amount of water that must flow from the Euphrates at the border between Syria and Turkey is determined by agreements between the two countries. Syria is supposed to receive 500 cubic meters per second of water from Turkey in accordance with the agreement that was reached in 1987 between Damascus and Ankara. On the other hand, in 2021, the Syrian government accused Turkey of cheating Syrians out of their fair share of the water that the Euphrates provided. At this time, the river is only contributing 200 cubic meters per second of water. The construction of dams upstream in Turkey has also been a factor in the reduction of water flow. Syria accuses Turkey of directly weaponizing water access by cutting off water to Syrian cities. This cutoff caused the Allure water station, a crucial source of water in northeast Syria, to stop generating electricity, which led to Syria's government being unable to function. According to UNICEF, some large water systems and associated electricity infrastructure are split between different areas of control, which creates difficulties for hundreds of thousands of people in gaining equitable access to water supplies. The governments, in times of crisis, it is customary for the government to take charge, with the goals of alleviating suffering and ensuring access to essential social services. In Syria, things are not like this at all. If the Syrian government actually worked and enforced its own laws, the people of Syria would probably feel the effects of the changing Euphrates less negatively. These services would include helping communities along the Euphrates River adapt to a changing climate, as well as providing essential access to clean and safe water. Because of the ongoing civil war in Syria, over 7 million people have been forced to flee the country, and another 7 million have been displaced within Syria themselves. In addition, the country's infrastructure has suffered significant damage, and because of the ongoing conflicts, it is unlikely that any reconstruction efforts will be undertaken in the near future. The fact that certain groups have been barred from participating in the regime of Bashar al-Assad has led to the formation of a large number of active factions within the conflict, which contributes to the complexity of the war. For instance, the Kurds are a sizable ethnic minority in Syria and can also be found in neighboring countries such as Turkey, Iraq, and Iran. They are concentrated in the northern part of the country. People of Kurdish descent living in Syria were a part of the population that took to the streets to demonstrate against the government of Syria and call for greater democratic representation. Syria is exposed to a systemic risk that could result in severe instability and put the state and its institutions in jeopardy as a result of the combination of these factors and the accelerating effects of climate change. In addition, the country's infrastructure has suffered significant damage, and because of the ongoing conflicts, it is unlikely that any reconstruction efforts will be undertaken in the near future. The fact that certain groups have been barred from participating in the regime of Bashar al-Assad has led to the formation of a large number of active factions within the conflict, which contributes to the complexity of the war. For instance, the Kurds are a sizable ethnic minority in Syria and can also be found in neighboring countries such as Turkey, Iraq, and Iran. They are concentrated in the northern part of the country. People of Kurdish descent living in Syria were a part of the population that took to the streets to demonstrate against the government of Syria and call for greater democratic representation. Syria is exposed to a systemic risk that could result in severe instability and put the state and its institutions in jeopardy as a result of the combination of these factors and the accelerating effects of climate change. Ferris suggests that the only solution would be some kind of political agreement, as well as some change in government and some change in the implementation of the rule of law. This would make it possible for people to go back home or find other permanent solutions for Syrians who are currently living as refugees in neighboring countries, such as resettlement in third countries like the US and Europe. NGOs taking on an expanded role as a result of the weakness of the Syrian state, other actors are increasingly coming to the aid of the Syrian people. Where there is a critical need for humanitarian assistance, non-governmental organizations play a catalytic role. There is a wide variety of non-profit organizations that are active on a global scale in the areas of social work, humanitarianism, and environmental protection. Non-governmental organizations keep an eye on what governments are doing and can be instrumental in persuading them to act in accordance with human rights principles. In addition, they have the potential to improve communities by fostering active participation among citizens and by bringing issues to the attention of more people. As a result of natural disasters, global financial crises, and migration, NGOs have begun to take a more direct interest in the policy-making process around the world in recent years. They are now engaging at a higher level and can serve as a stand-in government for citizens living in weak states by providing services that are typically provided by the government. This goes beyond simply providing aid. Campaigns to effect positive change have been carried out by NGOs in collaboration with one another, as well as with governments and international bodies such as the United Nations for more than a decade. There are some of these that are nonviolent, while others are more contentious. Syria-based non-governmental organizations also have a significant presence and have demonstrated that not every intervention needs to take place on a global scale. The COVID-19 pandemic, which drove many international aid organizations out of the country, brought to light the effectiveness of organizations with strong ties to the communities in which they operate. In an effort to fill the void left by the government, local non-governmental organizations have been doing a lot of humanitarian work in vulnerable areas along the Euphrates River that have been affected by contamination and drought. Although the relevant ministries have enacted laws to reduce water scarcity, such as irrigation fees and penalties for farmers who overuse water, and to modernize irrigation systems, these laws have not been implemented. This is despite the fact that the relevant ministries have enacted these laws. For instance, the Ministry of Housing and Construction devised a comprehensive plan to combat issues associated with the pollution of water sources by industrial and domestic waste, which was already a growing problem prior to 2011, but the plan was never put into action. Instead, it remained on paper. At the same time, the government has not provided an adequate level of humanitarian support to the communities. There are persistent reports of violations of international humanitarian law, and the efforts of humanitarian organizations are still hampered by restrictions and bureaucratic roadblocks. NGOs that are currently active in Syria, such as Mercy Corps, Relief International, and UNICEF, could further cooperate with the local authorities in order to learn more about the communities and provide the greatest amount of assistance possible to the people of Syria. Opportunities ahead for Syria. Cooperation on every level will be required to preserve the Euphrates River and, by extension, the people of Syria, not to mention the people of the other countries that are dependent on the river. The efforts of the international community, the private sector, local and international non-governmental organizations, the social and scientific communities, and the efforts of the entire society are all essential if we are to address the challenges that the Euphrates River is currently facing. As a result, the interstate agreements concerning the Euphrates should be revised to take into account the effects of climate change, and the international community should collaborate with the various parties involved to make these modifications as smooth as possible. The degradation of environmental water poses a threat to human livelihoods. Therefore, international support could provide local farmers with mitigating measures, such as resistant seeds and technical expertise, to assist them in adjusting to the new climatic conditions. It is absolutely necessary for the private sector to contribute in the form of additional funding for resources. In a variety of fields, private initiatives have the potential to provide crucial resources and knowledge. For instance, insurance companies can offer their expertise in weather prediction, and pharmaceutical companies can step in with vaccines to combat cholera outbreaks or provide other medicines. Another option is for insurance companies to offer their expertise in predicting earthquakes. The significance of these alliances can be seen in the expedient cooperation that occurs between NGOs on both the local and international levels. These coalitions will take many different forms, ranging from those involving international organizations and the scientific community to those involving religious organizations and efforts involving the entirety of society. It may be possible for international organizations such as UNICEF to play the role of a bridge and provide guarantees in order to facilitate the establishment of a permanent NGO cooperation mechanism in Syria. This would be done with the intention of addressing the effects of climate change, in particular the lack of water. By providing funding for such preventative initiatives, the international community could lend a hand in the fight against the humanitarian crisis caused by climate change. In a similar vein, the contribution made by the scientific and social communities is always helpful and should be encouraged. Innovative digital tools have the potential to strengthen both the educational and humanitarian sectors. One example of this is the raising of funds through digital social platforms in order to purchase first aid supplies. Another example is the coordination of virtual scientific forums in order to facilitate the submission of groundbreaking proposals and localized training initiatives. There is also a part for religious organizations to play in this. Beyond the scope of their humanitarian work, they have the ability to use their influence to collaborate with locals who might be suspicious of outside actors. In conclusion, efforts made by the entirety of society have the potential to play a part in reducing the negative effects of climate change. Syria can play a part in preventing further pollution of the physical environment and the Euphrates River by reducing its consumption of fossil fuels and increasing its use of clean energy. In the realm of water, there is a connection between all things. Any change in one location will inevitably have an effect on both the upstream and the downstream areas. Not only does the state of the Euphrates River have an effect on Syria and the other countries that it passes through, but it also has an effect on the peace and security of the surrounding area. Over the past few decades, the water levels of major rivers all over the world, such as the Yangtze River in China, the Colorado River in the United States, and the Rhine in Germany, have been steadily declining. The events taking place on the Euphrates River should serve as a valuable lesson for us. The only way for the world to adapt to and deal with the systemic risks that climate change creates, both there and everywhere else, is through the cooperation and action of the international community. And that's all for today. We will see you in the next one. Subscribe if you want to watch more.